we had a pretty wide spread of votes for the posters on the late capitalism exercise. And that was because there were a lot of good ones. Might have been also because I compressed the time for that, I'm sorry. But there was only one that got more than one vote, and that was Team Two's. And oops, I was wanting to write on that, not move it. Team Two is the runaway winner with doubling the second place team votes. That and they're like, I don't know, 6 second place teams, something like that. Yeah, it must be that. Anyway, I thought Team 2 did a pretty nice job. Their definition is pretty good, and their late capitalism examples are pretty good. I'd fault them points for not having a rectangular grid, but that's a quibble, and perhaps I'm just too much of a type A person to have to want everything neat and tidy and rectangular. But anyway, they do a nice job. They especially do a nice job on policy responses. The limitations on advertising subject matter. This is pretty tricky territory because, free speech is a big thing in the United States, embedded in the First Amendment of the Constitution. And so, there's a lot of things that can be construed as abrogating free speech. But we do it for cigarette ads and some other alcohol ads, etc. And beer ads are allowed, but hard alcohol ads are not on TV that I can think of. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, there is some precedent, and you could think maybe of rules that would be construed as protecting the public interest and just the public dignity of some groups. It's tricky, but it's a possible policy. I thought the united policy response was most possible and would directly affect the problem. That's certainly in the purview of government. And then for a lot of these examples, the increasing the progressivity of the tax code rather than write-offs. There's a lot of ways to get to progressivity, and some deductions can certainly do that. But the progressivity of the tax rates, what's taxed, what's not, that's the write-offs. Anyway, interestingly, the recent changes in the tax code are exactly the opposite. They make the tax code substantially less progressive, more regressive. And that's a concern to many economists at a time of A, increasing income inequality, and B, this big tax cut at a time when the economy is overheating. And now we see they just passed a budget that increases spending at $400 billion at a time when the economy is overheating or maybe overheating. It's a little bit nutty to be some of the policy going on. Increasing the progressivity, though, many of these examples display at the high end of the income scale, rich people paying absurd amounts for items that it's just hard to see how they're increasing anybody's level of happiness. The $450 pair of jeans that have stains put on them to make them look hip. The juicer that is $900 that doesn't perform any better than a Ninja juicer that costs, I just bought one, $80 at Freddy's. Anyway, these are all absurd examples, and they suggest that the happiness associated with spending at the high end is very low. And the argument is for progressivity is that you tax that money away, you're not making people less happy because they're blowing it on idiotic stuff. It's a judgment that we're certainly making, and there's an abrogation of freedom there. But these are pretty absurd examples, and they're telling us something. And then meanwhile, we have people in the United States. We're a very rich economy, but our poorest citizens and even our middle class citizens, many don't have health care that's attainable because of the cost. Many people are having trouble just staying in their homes. There's the money that we tax away in a proportional or a regressive tax code the spending that we're taking from poorer households and middle income households we're depriving them of absolute necessities that contribute a lot to happiness. So that's the argument, and it's a good argument. It's an argument. It's not truth from God, but it's a reasonable position to take in that argument. So good job, Team 2. I've got a couple more screencasts that I want to point out. I want to point out a couple things that are important.